Welcome to the channel, English Epics. So, Tracy, do you mind if I call you Tracy? Dr. Karen asked. And without waiting for an answer, continued her question. So, Tracy, what do you hope to gain from these sessions based on the initial video consultation? She already had a general understanding of the issues in the Briley marriage, but she wanted Tracy to articulate her own goals and expectations. Ensuring that all parties are on the same page is a crucial first step in marriage counseling. This was her first in-person session with the Briley couple, Tracy and Jack. Although she had already spoken with Tracy over video, this was the first time she was seeing Tracy's husband. Jack Briley was 6 feet 2, 188 centimeters, tall, lean, with a runner's build rather than someone who spent hours in the gym. Clean-shaven, with thick blonde hair neatly brushed back behind his collar. Tracy Briley was shorter, 167 centimeters, about 5 feet 6, and Karen estimated her weight to be around 57 kilograms, 125 pounds. She also had blonde hair, which was tied back today in a ponytail that reached between her shoulder blades. She had a medium-sized bust and stunning legs, shown off by a black pencil skirt and high heels. Her tan legs were clearly an athlete's. Muscular calves that were accentuated perfectly by the 10 centimeters, 4 inch heels. Since I went back to work 6 months ago, my husband has become controlling and emotionally abusive. He constantly tries to violate my right to personal space. I didn't work for several years so I could stay home, and now that our daughters are in school, I've returned to work. Jack has become insanely jealous, and his controlling, manipulative behavior has gotten out of hand. My goal in marriage counseling is to convince Jack that he has nothing to worry about, and that his controlling behavior has to stop. Karen watched Jack's face as his wife described the problem from her point of view. His expression was blank, almost detached, while she spoke. Karen could easily imagine him as a controlling jerk. Thank you, Tracy. Jack, let's follow up on what Tracy just said. Tell me, from your perspective, what do you see as the problem in your marriage? Jack brightly met Karen's gaze, then shifted his eyes to his wife. Then he spoke in a flat, emotionless tone. My wife is having an emotional affair with her boss. I want her to quit her job and never have contact with him again. Tracy rolled her eyes in disgust. Do you see what I mean? I get the same crap day after day, and I'm just sick of it. Tracy spat out the last words with a mix of anger and frustration. Karen turned to Jack. That's a very serious accusation, Jack. I have a couple of questions for you. Why do you believe her relationship with her boss is an affair, and what evidence do you have? Jack leaned back in his chair and looked first at Tracy, then at the marriage counselor. I'll answer, but first I have a couple of questions for you. If you don't mind, Tracy chose you and met with you, but I haven't had the chance to speak with you myself. Karen gave him an assessing look. You can ask me a few questions. If I find them inappropriate, I'll simply choose not to answer. Fair enough, Jack said, meeting Karen's gaze again. Are you married? No, I'm not, Karen replied. Have you ever been married? Karen always felt a bit uncomfortable discussing her personal life. But she also knew that a good counselor should be able to show some openness and vulnerability to clients to a degree. Yes, I was married, but I've been divorced for several years now. Karen was starting to feel increasingly uneasy with the direction of the questions. Why did you get divorced? Well, now the questions were clearly crossing the line. Karen thought to herself. Before she could respond, Jack asked the next one. Was it infidelity? My marriage has nothing to do with yours. Your marriage and mine are nothing alike. And the breakdown of my marriage is not something we're going to discuss further. Karen realized her words had come out angry rather than compassionate. She needed to get her emotions under control. Why? Did Jack really feel the need to poke at such a painful subject? I'll take that as a yes. Jack replied. Yes, there was infidelity, Karen said, her lips tightening into a pale, thin, firm line. Thank you for your honesty, Jack responded. I'm calling it an emotional affair because they not only see each other all day at work, but they also constantly text each other in the evenings. And on weekends, every time we go out, she spends most of the time on her phone with her boss. She refuses to show me her messages and turns her phone away so I can't see what she's doing. She sleeps with the phone under her pillow and takes it with her into the bathroom. We haven't had sex in 3 months, and if she's not already sleeping with him, I know she will be soon. Karen gave Tracy an appraising look. This was a very different version of the story than the one Tracy had shared with her during the video call. Tracy, is Jack telling the truth? Tracy's face once again showed anger and disgust. No. I text with a lot of people. I have family and friends I exchange messages with. He's just sad and pathetic. He wants to control me and won't let me have friends. Jack, do you have any evidence to support what you're accusing Tracy of? Jack reached into the briefcase he had placed on the floor when he took his seat at the beginning of the session. He pulled out several pages and handed them to Karen. "What am I looking at?" Karen asked. "This is our phone bill from 4 months ago. If you look at the 4th page, that's where Tracy's cell phone data starts. It continues on to the 5th page. You can count them if you want, but in that month she sent just over 300 messages, mostly to me, her sisters, and her mom." "What are you doing, Jack? You're proving my point," Tracy said. Until now, she had been sitting quietly, but Jack was starting to get under her skin with his antics. Jack reached into his briefcase and pulled out another document, noticeably thicker. "This is our phone bill from last month," Jack said, handing the pages to Karen. The itemized records for Tracy's cell phone start on page 4. Just like the previous one. "Can you tell me on which page it ends?" Karen flipped through the pages and looked up in surprise. "Page 12. This bill has 7 more pages of text than the one you showed me before." "Exactly," Jack said. "Now take a look at the phone numbers. They're almost all to the same number," Karen replied. "It looks like thousands of messages to one person." Karen turned to Tracy. "Tracy, I'm texting my boss, so what? We have a great relationship, and he understands me, but I'm not cheating on you. I'm not having an affair," Tracy shouted at Jack. Karen looked at Jack, whose expression was the complete opposite of Tracy's. While she was visibly upset and emotional, he remained calm, almost serene. "Prove it," Jack said. That statement caused both Tracy and Karen to freeze. It wasn't Tracy's job to prove she wasn't having an affair. It was Jack's responsibility to prove that she was. "How am I supposed to prove that I'm not doing something?" Tracy asked. "You can't prove a negative. Asking me to do that is just as ridiculous as assuming I'm having an affair." "You can prove it to my satisfaction," Jack replied, extending his hand. "All you have to do is let me read your messages." Tracy looked at Karen. "Can you imagine what I have to deal with? This is exactly what I meant when I said I have no personal life." She rolled her eyes at Jack. "Fine, you want to read my messages?" Tracy reached into her purse and pulled out her iPhone. "Go ahead. After this, you can apologize to me and drop this ridiculous topic." She unlocked the screen and handed the phone to Jack. Jack reached into his briefcase and pulled out a laptop and a cable. He connected one end of the cable to Tracy's iPhone and the other to his laptop. Then he opened the laptop. "What are you doing?" Tracy asked. Her face showed a flash of panic. "I bought a recovery program for iPhone. It will restore all deleted texts, photos, and videos," Jack said as he tapped a few keys on his laptop and looked at the screen. "No," Tracy screamed. Lunging toward her phone and snatching it from Jack's hands, she yanked the phone and the sync cable away from him. Karen was stunned by Tracy's sudden reaction. Jack, on the other hand, seemed to have expected it. "I won't let you violate my privacy," Tracy shouted. "Tracy," Karen said gently, "this doesn't look good for you. It gives the impression that you're hiding something." "I have a right to privacy," she said. Looking at Jack, "I'm your wife. You're supposed to trust me." Karen looked at Jack. "She's right about that. If you don't trust her, then there is no marriage. Everyone deserves personal space." Jack shifted his gaze from Karen to Tracy, then back to Karen. "Do you know the difference between privacy and secrecy?" "I don't know, Jack. Why don't you explain it to us?" Tracy replied with a hint of aggression. "In a marriage, everyone has a right to privacy. You want to use the bathroom with the door closed. That's personal space. You want to keep a journal or a diary. That's personal space. Privacy doesn't affect a marriage. It neither helps nor harms it. Privacy is completely neutral in a marriage. But secrecy is different. If you're having relationships and conversations with members of the opposite sex, and you deliberately exclude your spouse from them, then you've moved beyond privacy. You're living a secret life. Secrecy harms a marriage. You know just as well as I do that the texts you exchange with your boss hurt me and damage our relationship. That's exactly why you won't let me see them. You know that if I see what the two of you are saying and doing, I'll file for divorce." Tears began to stream down Tracy's face. "That's not true. Maybe some of our messages crossed the line a little, but I haven't cheated on you. And I have no intention of cheating on you." Tracy sobbed softly. "So where does that leave us, Jack?" Karen asked. "The goals you stated at the beginning of the session didn't leave much room for compromise. Are you planning to forbid Tracy from working?" "You mean setting boundaries?" Jack shook his head. "She's an adult." As with the earlier question about privacy versus secrecy, Jack had one more question for the counselor. "Do you know the difference between rules and boundaries?" Karen nodded. "I do. But why don't you tell us what you're thinking?" "Rules are something you impose on other people. Like, you must do this or you're not allowed to do that. Setting rules for children is one thing, but you can't impose rules on adults. What you can do is set boundaries for yourself and decide on consequences when someone violates them. For example, it makes me uncomfortable when you do that. If you continue making me uncomfortable, There will be consequences. You see, boundaries are about protecting yourself. What are you trying to say, Jack? Tracy had stopped crying, though her face was still wet with tears. The same thing I said at the beginning. Your continued employment and your relationship with your boss make me feel unsafe in our marriage and uncomfortable in our relationship. If you keep making me feel unsafe and uncomfortable, there will be consequences. Tracy and Karen looked at each other, then at Jack. You can't make me quit my job, Tracy said. I'm not even going to try. Jack replied, that would be a rule, and I'm not setting any rules for you, but if I don't quit, there will be consequences, just like you said. That's right, Jack answered. How is that not a rule? You're forcing a decision on me that you've already made, Tracy exclaimed in frustration. I don't see it that way. You have a choice. You can continue doing things that make me feel unsafe and uncomfortable, or you can stop doing them so I feel safe and comfortable. The choice is entirely yours. What will the consequences be? Karen asked. Excuse me, Jack replied. You've stated your boundaries and said there would be consequences if they're violated. I think Tracy deserves to know what those consequences are, so she can perform a cost-benefit analysis of violating my boundaries, so she can decide whether the juice is worth the squeeze. Jack shook his head. That's not how this works. She just needs to know that there will be consequences. Besides, even if she knew in advance what the consequences would be, do you really think that would stop her? Yes, it would, Tracy said. She had stopped crying and wiped her face. What's the harshest punishment allowed by law for a crime? Jack asked. The death penalty. I don't think you're going to kill me for crossing a so-called boundary, Tracy laughed. Jack gave a humorless smile. I wouldn't, even if you deserved it. But you're right about the death penalty. For some crimes, it's already in place, and yet, people still commit those crimes. Knowing the consequences in advance doesn't seem to stop them. They just get better at hiding what they're doing. So no, I'm not going to tell you what the consequences of crossing my boundaries will be. What's that internet acronym? FAFO, mess around and see what happens, Tracy said under her breath. We're out of time for today. So on that pleasant note, we'll end the session. We have another one scheduled in 2 weeks. I have a really good feeling about what we've accomplished today. That was how Karen typically closed a session, truthfully. She had no idea what Jack was thinking. Tracy stood up, smiling at her husband. But Jack only gave her a sad look and shook his head. You missed a very good session 2 weeks ago, Karen said. Tracy mentioned you had to leave town unexpectedly for work. I told him we had a very productive meeting, Tracy said to Karen. I feel much more hopeful about our marriage going forward. At this session, Jack seemed even more relaxed than the last time. At that previous session, he had looked sad and resigned. This time, he was almost cheerful. This session will go well, Karen thought. Tracy began. Dr. Karen and I talked about transparency and how important it is in a marriage, Tracy pushed her phone toward Jack. You can look through it and recover my messages, she said. Thank you, Tracy, Jack smirked, but that won't be necessary. I'm sure you've already factory reset your phone. You definitely look much happier than during our last session, Karen said. The way that session ended had me very concerned for both of you. Jack waved off her concerns. I'm in a much better state of mind now than I was then. Since he came back from his business trip out of town, he's been much calmer and happier, Tracy said. I think the trip did him good, and me too, she added cheerfully. You both look much happier today. I don't think either of you smiled during our last session together, Karen noted. She has a beautiful smile, doesn't she? Jack said. Her smile just lights up the room. Karen nodded at Tracy's happily smiling face. Her radiant smile fully confirmed Jack's compliment. I always loved making her smile. I probably have 1,000 photos of Tracy smiling on my phone. Let me show you my favorite one. This is Tracy's happiest smile. Jack pulled out his phone and held it up so they could see the photo. It was a picture of Tracy smiling. She looked radiant. Her sparkling eyes reflected the joy she felt in that moment, and the way they crinkled showed someone completely content with her life. Jack looked up at Tracy. Do you remember this photo, sweetheart? You look so happy in it. I don't remember exactly where it was taken, Tracy replied, making a small gesture with her thumb and forefinger. Can you shrink it down? You bet, Jack replied, still holding his phone so that Tracy and Karen could see the screen. Jack slowly made a pinching gesture as Karen and Tracy watched. The photo of Tracy began to shrink and the background started to come into focus. As Tracy became smaller, it became clear she was standing just a few feet in front of a door. As the image zoomed out further, a hand appeared on the door handle. Then, the full figure of a man standing behind her came into view. Baby, let me explain, Tracy said. Her sobbing quickly turned into hyperventilation as she began to realize what she was seeing. Jack ignored her, continuing to pinch and zoom the screen. It was clearly Tracy. Coming out of a motel room with a man, Tracy let out a groan. Her boss, Karen, asked quietly, with sadness in her voice. Right on the money, Jack said, and look at the time, 4 hours after her session with you. Jack tapped the screen, switching to another photo. It was another shot of Tracy at the same motel door, this time going in. Check the timestamp. Jack said, less than an hour after your session ended, she was in a motel room with the man she claimed she'd never cheat on me with. Great work, marriage counselor. I don't think you'll be getting any credit for saving this marriage. Tracy groaned even louder when she heard that. I'm so sorry. Baby, we can fix this. It didn't mean anything. I'll quit my job. We can work on saving our marriage. Jack smiled and shook his head. You wanted to know what the consequences would be. Guess what? They're here. I'm divorcing you. That much is obvious. I no longer care whether you quit your job. You'll need the income. Jack handed Tracy a business card. This is my attorney's contact information. You'll need to find yourself a lawyer and give them my guy's details. Before coming here, I packed all your things and dropped them off at your parents' house. They're not thrilled with you, but they agreed to let you stay. The house was mine before the marriage, so it won't be part of the settlement. And I don't want you living there. After today, I never want to see you again. When Jack stood up and walked to the door, Tracy was completely stunned. Karen looked as if she were in shock. Are you planning to take any action against your wife? Jack shook his head. You mean my soon-to-be ex-wife? No, that's your problem now. You had a chance to hold her accountable, but you didn't take it. You made such a strong impression on her during your last session that she walked out and immediately cheated on me. By the way, I found out that when you said your own marriage ended because of infidelity, it was actually your infidelity, not your husband's. The reason I'm bringing this up is because I don't think marriage counseling is the right profession for you. Jack stood up and walked toward the exit of the office. He looked at Tracy. She was sitting on the floor, hugging herself and rocking back and forth, repeating, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. He shook his head at the heartbreaking scene and walked out the door. Thank you for being with us. And if you're one of those who watches silently, just leave a like. It helps new stories come to light.